Let's look at meiosis. Last time we talked about mitosis, that's the cell division. Now let's look at meiosis. Meiosis is when you produce gamete, and that's the egg and the sperm, is the sexual reproduction. And the reason is the egg and sperm need to meet each other. So they fuse together, fertilization happens. So the chromosome numbers need to divide into half. So when they fertilize, when fertilization happens, you have the same amount of chromosome. So that's the sexual reproduction. And so the whole sexual reproduction include meiosis and then gamete and then fertilization. So we're going to focus on the meiosis part. Okay, so this process only happens in gonads. Gonads are the sexual organs. So the male, the gonads is testes, and the female would be ovaries. And meiosis, the most important thing is to reduce the number of chromosomes because the egg and the egg also called the oogonium and the sperm, they need to meet each other. So their chromosome numbers need to decrease to 23. And when the fertilization happens, you start to have the diploid. That's the two. So those egg and sperm, they're actually, excuse me, the haploid. They're haploid. Each one only has 23. Okay, so the cells still need to grow. They still have interface. And then that's when they divide. That's when they divide. They have to divide twice. So meiosis, different from mitosis, is there are two division because you duplicate chromosomes and then you divide and then you divide again. That's how you end up with the gamete with only half of the chromosome number. So totally we have meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. So because you have to divide them twice. And each one of them, you also have the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Those phases we talked about before. So let's look at meiosis 1 and then meiosis 2. Okay, so what happened in meiosis 1? This picture explains what happens in the meiosis 1. Very similar. The nucleus envelope disappear, chromosome condense, they line up in the center. But you find, okay, this picture show you clearly these two chromosomes, the light blue, the dark blue, and you find they switch, one of the legs switch. Yes, that's the important thing happens in meiosis 1. And when they pull a little bit different, we'll talk about this. And then you have two new cells. That's the meiosis 1. And sexual reproduction, one important thing is to increase the diversity of the offspring, which is different from mitosis, like those single cells, E. coli. When they divide, you have two complete new daughter cells that are exactly the same. So they don't have diversity. Means you can use the antibiotic to wipe down the whole colony. And for sexual reproduction, the important thing is to increase the diversity. So we find our offspring, if you have if you have siblings, you find your siblings don't look exactly like you, even though we look similar. And the reason is what happens. We're gonna explain here. So those chromosomes, they will do something to increase the diversity. So each gamete, their DNA are not exactly the same. Okay, so let's look at the meiosis 1 first, prophase 1. So prophase 1, those DNA turn into chromosome, so they condense. And nuclear envelope disappear, nucleolus disappear. Okay, then these two, synapses and crossover. So these two processes, their job is to increase the diversity. So let's review the chromosome. Remember we talked about, okay, we have the homologous chromosomes, they carry, we have two alleles, and they carry the same gene that's homologous. We also have the non-homologous, that's the sex chromosomes, like the X and Y, they don't carry the same genes. Okay, let's look at the homologous chromosomes. Homologous chromosomes, they have they carry different alleles, and they may be dominant, recessive, but the same genes, just different alleles. Could be dominant, or dominant recessive, or recessive, recessive. And one from father, one from mother, okay? And during meiosis one, what happens, we want to increase diversity. So the way they do is they're gonna switch part of the chromosome, and they need to come closer. So synapsis means those two duplicate chromosomes, they start to come closer. And after they come closer, and now you find this structure has 4 legs, and we have a name called the tetrad. Tetrad is before they start to switch, after they come over, and they attach 1, 2, 3, 4 tetrad. And after you have tetrad, what happens? Okay, crossing over. So crossing over specifically means part of the chromosome leg, and they complete switch. And you can switch, okay, you can switch this whole leg, or you can switch 80%, you can switch 60%, you can switch 10%. It's different, it means, okay, it really increased the diversity because each gamete, they're different. So crossing over result in genetic recombination. That's why after they divide, okay, they produce, say these two, they cross over. And then after they divide, you find, okay, you produce 1, 2, 3, 4. These all 4 gamete, they're all different. And it increased the diversity, because sexual reproduction, important things, the purpose of sexual reproduction is to increase the diversity. So we have different offsprings. And then metaphase. Okay, in the metaphase, those tetrad line up, and they randomly separate, and they randomly align. Say, well, okay, this comes from father, this comes from mother, and then in this case, okay, the father one is down, the mother one is up. So when they divide, they randomly divide. So each chromosomes have 2 different possibility, right? Either the father's up, mother's down, or mother's up, father's down. And you have 23 pairs. So it's 2 to the power of 23 times. And then different kind of possibilities. So it make all the gametes almost different in each one of them. So those crossing over and random alignments really contribute to the diversity of those gametes gene pools. They're totally different. So the possibility, this one, that's the math part. So each pair of chromosomes, there are 2 possibilities. Right? 2 possibilities, and we totally have 23 pairs. So it turned out the total possibility is 2 to the power of 23 times. It increased the diversity of the genes. Okay, and then anaphase. Anaphase is those they start to pool. So it's called the independent assortment. Those random separations called the independent assortments. And then eventually you have the 4 different kind of the gametes. And the last one is the telophase and cytokinesis. So after telophase and cytokinesis, those chromosomes completely separated, and the cytosol cell membrane divide, and now you have 2 haploid cells. That's the finish of meiosis 1. And then you can have meiosis 2, right? So meiosis 2 is very similar to mitosis. And now you have those 2 sister chromatids, and they are ready to get separated. That's meiosis 2. So meiosis 2 also have the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. So this time is similar to the mitosis. because those genes cross over, randomly separation happens already. So mitosis 2 is to finish the up. Sorry, meiosis 2 is to finish the job. So prophase, those chromosomes line up in the center. That's the prophase. And when they finish, that's the metaphase, metaphase 2. Metaphase 2. So similar to the mitosis, metaphase 2 is they line up in the center. And then anaphase 2, they start to separate, sister chromatids separate. And the last one is the cytokinesis. So you end up with four gametes, four gametes. And eventually, the diversity, it increased the genes, each gametes, their chromosomes, their genes are very different. Okay, so that's the meiosis. So especially in the sperm, that's what happens after puberty. After puberty, every day, every 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in the testes, they just produce this. So in the male's testes, every day you produce millions of sperm. They just go through the meiosis 1, meiosis 2, and produce the sperm. And from here to here, there's another term because apparently those balls, there's no way for these sperm cells to go to find the egg. So they need to have the phalangula, and there's a structure change. We'll talk about this later. Produce four sperm cells. And the spermatogenesis, that's the big word to say produce sperm. And if you produce egg, there's the oogenesis. Oogenesis produce egg. A little bit different because oogenesis is you don't produce 4 eggs, you only produce 1. Okay, let's stop here.